Welcome to Lift Off with Energizing Results, the podcast that can help you become a better partner in your family and a self-propelled leader with inner certainty in your business. Now, here's your host, Uwe Dockhorn.
Welcome to Lift Off with Energizing Results. Let me start with an invitation for you before we dive in. This is a safe and neutral space here. The more open and honest you answer the questions that will come up to yourself, the more effective this will be for you. Sound good? Okay, here we go. Today I'm very excited to introduce you to Tony Bagnato. How are you doing, Tony? And where are you hanging out right now?
Uwe, thanks for actually using the proper Italian pronunciation of my name. Thank you very much for that. I'm located just outside Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and pleased to be here today.
No, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Well, it's the vicinity to Italy that makes it possible.
I know either somebody has Italian background, is located in Europe, or speaks Italian when they pronounce it Bagnato as opposed to Bagnato.
Yeah, it is Bagnato. And you know what Bagnato means in Italian?
If we had time, I know it means wet, and I can tell you a story about traveling Italy and seeing signs that told me to slow down because the roads were bagnato.
So the roads were yours, right?
Absolutely. They were slippery. They were wet. Yes.
No pun intended. Got it. All right. Former executive at RBC, Canada's largest financial institution, Tony is founder of the Confidence Advantage Incorporated, an executive coaching practice dedicated to empowering leaders to have the career success they desire and deserve. And I think your mission to gain the confidence advantage and take control of your career, I think it's just remarkable. I think very thankful that I can talk to you today, Tony.
Thanks, Uwe.
Wonderful. So my first question is, who's your ideal client and what's the biggest challenge they face?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we all want to focus and make sure that we provide value to the right type of individual. And, I'm focused on that individual who's in that manager, senior manager, director level, who's aspiring to advance their careers, to get to that more senior director level or executive level. And when I think about the biggest challenges they're facing, really it can be broken down into two ways. There's exogenous and there's endogenous. The endogenous stuff is that self-doubt, that fear of failure. And the exogenous stuff that I see is that worrying about what other people think, which is a little bit endogenous and exogenous, but also understanding what expectations leaders have of individuals. What skills are they looking for that are different for that individual, in their current role versus where they aspire to go?
Excellent explanation for that. There's always an internal and external matters, right?
Yeah.
So the last time I checked, we're all humans, hopefully. So what are the common mistakes your clients typically make when trying to solve these challenges?
Yeah, I hear lots of different things and try to work with my clients, but on a number of different topics. But I think at first and at the core is they don't know where to start. And in many cases, the individuals I'm working with have, had good careers or strong careers, their mid-level career, and they're now at a point where, they haven't had to update their resume. They haven't had to update their LinkedIn profile. They haven't had to talk about their successes. And so they got to figure out where to start. And the second piece is most people I find in this particular stage of their career undersell themselves. They take for granted all the great work they've done. When I ask them to tell me about some successes and I, get excited about it, they'll say, well, I'm just doing my job. But what they don't appreciate is the value and impact it's having when in their organization. And as importantly, those transferable skills and expertise that they can take somewhere else and really have a huge impact. And so he's helping them, understand how to articulate their value or tell their story is a key thing that, I don't want to call it a mistake, but maybe a starting point for people when they're looking to, take that next step.
I think it's a good reminder also to kind of like have that perspective to whenever the next level is coming up, to have that perspective to kind of like look inside what's going on here, according to my values, how can I communicate it to the outside? So, and that is where you come into the picture, right?
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Wonderful. So before I ask Tony, what is one valuable free action that our audience can easily implement? Let me quickly say something here to our audience. If you are enjoying the show so far, please rate and recommend us to someone you think could benefit from the show. thank you in advance for spreading the word. So, Tony, what is one valuable free action that our audience can implement that will help with that issue?
Yeah, and this might sound a little contentious a bit, but stop using the term imposter syndrome. We hear about it all the time in society, and it's to me, it's just a term that society has coined, and it almost sounds like an incurable malady. Now, I want to be clear: the feelings are genuine; they're real. You are facing something that is a barrier to success. But what I like to do is say, okay, well, what is the barrier you're facing? Is it self-doubt? Is it fear of failure? Is it worrying about what other people think? And then understanding which of those is causing your imposter syndrome, and then let's focus on it. I don't have a lotion or a potion to deal with a syndrome, but I can help you overcome self-doubt.
Yeah, there's always something at the root level. So, well, I'm German. I'm always going for the root level. So, finding out the root cause. I'm thorough. So,
yeah,
yeah. No, thank you for sharing. So, I want to give you also the platform to share where people can find you, but also what is one valuable free resource that you can direct people to that will help with that, but also in a broader sense.
Yeah, thanks, Uwe. I mean, I can be found predominantly on LinkedIn, where I am active on a daily basis, sharing stories, giving ideas and strategies to help people, have that success that they desire and deserve, as you articulated at the beginning. I also have a YouTube channel, and most importantly, I have a website called communicatingconfidence.com. So for my company, The Confidence Advantage, it's called communicatingconfidence.com. Now, you said one tool, but I'm going to say two because they're linked together. And one of them is it's a PDF on the tools and resources section that's available to anybody. Just go and download it. It's called Articulating Your Value with Confidence. And it's an exercise that people can go through to pull out those stories from them, to draw out the impact that they've had. Now, whether they're updating the bullets on the resume, whether they're updating their LinkedIn profile, preparing for an interview, getting involved in a networking event, or going to a conference and having an opportunity to talk to leadership, just pulling those stories, that self-reflection and introspection you talked about a moment ago. So the exercise does a good job of helping you with that. Now, the second piece, or the second tool, which I say are linked together, is called Telling Your Story with Impact. And all it is the Carl framework. It was a tool developed by the University of Edinburgh that I like because it's a great framework to tell your stories. It wasn't developed for interviews. It wasn't developed for anything in particular that I can recall. But what it does is it breaks down the context of your story, the action you or your team took, the results you generated, and for me, as importantly, the learnings that you created and generated from that experience. So linking those tools together, I think, are two great exercises, or one great exercise that individuals can do. And again, these resources are free on my website.
Wonderful. Of course, we put everything in the show notes. And I had hoped for one, so thanks for the bonus. So, Tony, what's the one question I should have asked you that would be of great value to our audience?
That's interesting. I get a lot of questions from people, but the one question that you could have asked that I hear quite often is, what is leadership looking for individuals that they want to move from that individual contributor to a more senior level or executive role? There is a big difference. I mean, an individual contributor can have a lot of success. They can be recognized. They can win awards. They can be compensated really well. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those same successes and transferable skills will set you up for success in an executive role. And so when I think about it, I think about, strategic mindset. And, people have been turned down for jobs. They finished second in an interview and only to be told that the individual that was successful had more of a strategic mindset. And so I just introduced an infographic recently that breaks down the 8 components, or the 8 behaviors that I see for strategic mindset, things that I see in leaders. Leaders are forward thinking. They have that ability to impactfully communicate. Communication is so core to everything we do. Understanding risk is another behavior. And it's not only understanding it, but how to maybe mitigate it or deal with it if you can't mitigate it. Identifying opportunities is another key behavior, because you've got to be going ahead in the organization, figuring where we're going to take the organization. Effectively allocating resources, whether it is, dollars or people, how best do we maximize the impact on the organization and help the people the best in our organization? Thinking big, the big picture thinking, being able to understand what's going on in the marketplace and with our competitors and so forth. And learning from the past and understanding what did or didn't work in the past and bringing it forward. And lastly, is that ability to connect the dots. It's that ability to take disparate information from all sorts of different places and crystallize it down and be able to take action, as opposed to being distracted and, almost thrown into a level of inertia because you don't know how to deal with all this different data. So, to your question, what should you have asked, or what could you have asked? It's what do leaders look for differently? And to me, it's being able to demonstrate these 8 key behaviors of strategic mindset.
Well, I'm glad I asked. Here we go. 8 more reasons to get in touch with you, Tony. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Uwe.
Absolutely. So this brings me already to my final question for today. It's a personal one. When was the last time you experienced goosebumps with your family, and why?
That's an interesting question. So I think the obvious one that comes to mind is my son and his girlfriend recently announced their engagement, and so as a family, we are preparing for a wedding next April. So we're very excited. But if I'm being honest, and I'm going to reflect, about a year ago, they got a puppy named Dudley, and I became a grandpa, and I think that's probably the one that gives me the most goosebumps.
Well, can't wait for the other puppies, right?
One step at a time.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Tony, for this beautiful Goosebumps moment. And also thank you for our conversation. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate very much the knowledge and insights you share with us today.
Uwe, thank you very much for the invitation.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for listening. And as always, energizing results for you and your loved ones.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on Apple Podcast, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at uvedockhorn.com.